Hello and welcome to this edition of Wake Up and Live with the Arts. I'm Sue Johnson, your host here today, with several featured guests that you'll be meeting throughout the show. And we're going to start today, since we have a jam-packed edition, with one of Cleveland's becoming one of the more prolific and well-known playwrights and actor. And now I hear she's producing and somewhat directing, so she's pretty busy, and her name is Dr. Mary Weems, who I know is Mary. But how you doing today, Mary?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me on your show,
You're
Sue.
more than welcome. And after seeing, the play with the
Purses.
purses, and the woman in the car.
Black woman in the car,
Black
yes.
woman in the car. It was time to have you on again because you're doing new things. So we got so many things to talk about. You've had your own company for quite a while. And what's the name of that company?
It's called Bringing Words to Life. I started in 1996 because I wanted to inspire young people to become strong writers, readers, have knowledge of their history, and critical thinkers. So I started that business, and I've been doing consulting and programming around those areas and others since then.
And I noticed you said about writing. I do some tutoring for one of the suburban school systems. I am amazed, and I continue to be amazed, that they stopped teaching cursive writing and kids only know how to print.
This is true. And the other thing is, they aren't teaching typing in some schools either, which strikes me as really strange. Right now I'm working with a group of 8th graders and one 9th grade young man. The 8th graders hunt and peck in their typing, and that bothers me because beginning in the 9th grade, they're going to take something called the proficiency test, or whatever they're calling it nowadays, which is timed. And they've upped the writing requirement. So even if you know the information, if you can't type fast enough to get it down, it won't matter.
I am astounded. And speaking of your young folks, one of the many things that you're involved in now is this funk community.
Yes.
Tell us about that, hon.
FUNK stands for Fun, Understanding of History and Self, Innovation equals Knowledge. And the reason I started that program, along with my co-founder, Dr. Sandra Golden, and currently we're working with Emmy Award-winning videographer Dave Ramnarine, is because I think it's important for young people and adults too to know their history, to know where they come from, and that developing self-esteem is a huge part of becoming a successful adult. I think that being innovative, knowing how to use videography and social media, not only to create, but also to promote whatever it is you wind up doing, is important. And so this is a Saturday pilot program right now, housed at PNC Fairfax Community Center on East 83rd and Carnegie. We run the program from 9:30 in the morning to 1:30 in the afternoon, and during that period, they work with Dr. Golden on literacy and their history, me on poetry, performance, and their history, and Dave Ramnarine on creating a video that's pertinent to their history and community.
And you have an event coming up fairly soon. And would you tell our audience about this event?
Yes, we're going to have a culminating program for invited guests on April 22nd from 11 to 2 at PNC Fairfax Community Center, where the young people will have an opportunity to show the video they created and share some of the things they've learned while working with the three of us.
Now, you said invited guests. Now, can folks contact you to see about being included in attending this event?
Yes, they can. Anyone interested in coming can contact me at my email address, Mary E. Weems, WEEMS 45@gmail.com.
And now, in order to participate in the Funk Community Program, are these pre-selected students, or can folks call in if they have youth who are interested in participating, and they need to be in what grade range now?
10th and 11th grade.
Okay.
And so what we do is there's an first we ask people to recommend young people. And then there's an application and interview process, because we're interested in getting young people who are interested in working with us. Because it's a short program, we don't have a lot of time, and we count on the young people to be willing to do work outside the sessions.
Okay, when you say work, almost like homework assignments, sort of?
No,
or-
actually, they develop a project for video.
Uh-huh.
They develop what they're going to do as poets, and then they work with Dr. Golden on creating their own book.
I understand.
That's what it's
that.
about.
Okay, gotcha. Dr. Sandra Golden, now, I taught with a Sandra Golden, who was the yearbook journalism school newspaper person.
Okay.
Did she ever work at John Adams High?
No, I'm
Okay,
certain,
then
I'm
she's
certain
a
of that.
different
Sandra
Golden.
Golden. Yes.
Exact same name, but different person.
I
So-
do want to share one more thing, though.
Uh-huh.
The Deidre McPherson has started something at MoCA, the Museum of Contemporary Art, called Open Projector Night Teen Edition. And this past Friday, several young people had a chance to feature their films, and the film that our students created with Dave Ramnarine was one of the films. It's 6 minutes and 35 seconds long, and I understand from Deidre they'll be posting that film up on their website with the other 10 films by young people that were featured that evening.
Deirdre McPherson, I know that name, and I don't know why.
She's employed at MoCA Museum of Art,
Uh-huh.
and she designs community-based programs like Open Projector Night for teens.
We'll have to try to remember to talk to her to see if she and her program would like to be a guest on the show as well.
Absolutely, I'd appreciate that.
So this is just one component of the many things that you are involved in. And currently you have a play that possibly will be produced, and there's some folks looking at it to see about a staged reading. Tell us about that particular piece, your newest piece.
Well, I was in my basement rehearsing with Ebony Edwards
Oh, I know
on
her.
on my play At Last, celebrating the lives of Black women. And I had asked her to look up some information on Josephine Baker, who's one of the women in the play, to get a sense of how Josephine Baker moved. And so I heard her pick up her iPhone and say, "Hey Siri," and this sultry British voice come back, "Yes." And I was immediately struck by that. I'd never heard of Hey Siri. And so I saw a stage divided in threes, an Iraqi war veteran by the name of Mac, who's in his 50s, on a cot in a rooming house. And I saw a young woman in her late 20s, early 30s named Lucky, who hadn't been out of her apartment since she found her mother overdosed on heroin. And then I saw a 70-something-year-old white woman named Miss Elizabeth, who used to be a doll hoarder. And once I got those images in my mind, I wrote this one-act piece about how the iPhone affected their lives. Now, originally I thought that it was going to be a negative thing, that maybe the iPhone would drive them crazy or something. But as it worked out, the iPhone actually saves each of their lives.
And the Iraqi veteran, he has a particular issue, does he?
He suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, like many veterans. SD.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and the young lady, Lucky, she has...
She's agoraphobic because she hasn't been a fear of open spaces.
Uh-huh.
So she hasn't been out of this apartment since she found her mother OD'd on the couch.
So she's locked into her environment.
Yes.
And then the 70-plus-year-old lady...
Is a former doll hoarder who was busted for robbing her employer of $50,000.
To buy dolls?
Yes, to buy expensive dolls.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, so that's a piece. Then you brought a selection for us to hear, perhaps?
Well, you know what? I have two excerpts.
Okay.
So this is Elizabeth talking to her iPhone.
And she is the elderly lady?
Yes, she's
older
the
lady.
former doll hoarder.
Okay.
Good morning, I. How are you feeling this morning, sweetie pie? Did you sleep well? Not sure what was wrong with my bed last night, but I kept waking up, hearing my grandmother say what she always did just before she sent me to bed. Sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. So strange. Haven't thought about that old saying for years. Like most things old folks used to say, it had a reason. Fact is, back then, having bed bugs was pretty common. Adults would put the bed legs in tin cans with some kind of liquid in them. Used to hear them say it stopped the bugs from getting to your bed. Anyway, I barely slept a wink, but every time I looked over at you, you were quiet as a newborn puppy.
Beautiful. So this hopefully will be continued to be developed, and we'll start with a staged reading.
Yes.
So you'll let us know. Excuse me, I was telling you off camera about my allergy.
Yes.
You'll keep us posted about when it goes into a staged reading.
Yes,
and
definitely.
where it will be performed, et cetera,
Yes,
and when.
I will,
Okay.
definitely.
Now, the audiences also will, perhaps as they see you, remember that you recently did two very lovely pieces, one called Purses and one called The Black Lady in the Car. Would you give us a quick recap of what each of those were like? And they were done at Karamu.
Yes.
Yes.
Purses is based on something that my grandmother used to say. Don't put your purse on the floor, you'll never have no money.
That still goes today.
I know that's right. I still don't put my purse on the floor. That's right. And so I got this idea about an elder black woman named Hattie who used to have something called Talking Sundays in her living room. Talking Sundays happen between church and dinner time. And it's when any black woman in the neighborhood who has something on her mind and heart could come and talk and share and be supported. And so in Purses, there's Hattie the elder, and then there's three other women. One in her 40s who's married to an abusive husband, one in her 30s who's married to a man who doesn't realize she's taking birth control even though they're planning on having a child, and one in her 40s who suffers from alcoholism. And Purses is about how they tell their stories, and you find out the secrets they carry based on objects they have in their purses. Black Woman in the Car was inspired by my desire to cast a positive light on homeless women, and particularly homeless black women, so that people who see the play can understand that these are people who are loved and going through troubled times, and they're homeless because they're damaged. In Black Woman in the Car, it's about an ageless black woman in her 50-ish who has a traumatic experience. She loses her daughter in a tragic accident. And once that happens, she gets in her car and she starts driving around the country to find herself. Well, she winds up on a historically black street where she meets Forrest, the garage mechanic, Nita, a black woman school teacher who's studying to be a social worker and doing a graduate project on interviewing the homeless, and a man named Mr., who's a homeless guy she meets in the shelter, who continues to come and visit and look out for her once she stops her car on the street. Miss Lady is her name, and Miss Lady is mysterious in the way that she appears on the street. She heals Forrest's bad knees in a way that he still doesn't understand, and at the end of the play, she disappears.
Wonderful. Now, both of these plays, or either of these plays, are they scheduled, destined toward full productions?
I'm glad you asked about it, because Tony Sias on February the 8th directed a stage reading starring his wife, Kim Sias, and featuring Peter Lawson Jones as Forrest, Eileen McLean as Nita, and LaShawn Little as Mr. The stage reading was so well received that Tony has decided to take it to the next level of production So stay tuned.
And Tony Sias would be the CEO and president of Karamu, a position that he's held for about a year and a half now, and is doing amazing things, revitalizing and rejuvenating Karamu.
Yes.
So now what else have you been up to that you want to share with us in this segment? Oh, before I forget,
Yes.
people who want to contact you about consulting or teaching or showing young people and older people how to write,
Yes.
how will they connect with you?
Through my website, www.maryewings.org.
Okay, we'll have that up on the screen.
Okay.
Because you consult with companies or
Anybody who will hire me. So I've worked in school, in K through 12 schools. I've worked at colleges and universities. I've worked in libraries. I've worked in community centers, and I've worked with individuals one-on-one too.
so you are now one of our videographers, James McGilvray, calls himself ubiquitous, but all over. But I think that's the way you are as well, that you are all over the place.
Absolutely. You know, and right quick, I'll share something with you. I discovered a long time ago that if you want to work for yourself doing what you love, you need to figure out as many different avenues for getting paid so that when one's not paying you, another one will be.
And that is excellent, excellent advice for anybody who is a potential or actual entrepreneur. And then I also encourage folks, if you're fully employed, to develop a sideline or back hustle, doing things that represent your creative side.
You better
because
believe
this
it.
lady is very creative, and as she said, in this day and age, if never before, we need multiple aspects to our being, and being able to do several projects, and hopefully that, like you said, represent yourself and are creative.
You better believe it. Can I share an excerpt from Black Woman in the Car?
But of course, and then we'll begin to wrap this segment.
Okay. So I want to start with the setting. City side street at midnight. An old black Studebaker appears in front of one of the houses. Its bad paint job covers decades of rust. It is packed with Miss Lady's world, with space in the middle for a single mattress, a pillow, and several blankets. Ms. Lady slowly crawls out of the back of the station wagon. She stretches, walks around her car, moving some of the plastic bottles and containers on the side the audience can see. Satisfied, she walks to the driver's side of her car. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes, thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven to gaudy day denies. When I first read that poem in Miss Johnson's 10th grade English class, I thought Byron was talking about a black woman. Got so excited, I still remember how the lines felt on my tongue when I practiced reciting it in front of Granny's mirror. When it came time to share, I raised my hand like a flag in a storm. After I recited the poem, I said, "This could have been written about me." And the whole class started laughing. Thank God the bell rang and everybody rushed out. Miss Johnson called me over to her desk. Apparently, I was the only one who hadn't read the footnote. The poem was really about Byron's aunt in mourning clothes. He'd seen her walking through the garden, and that inspired the poem. Mama always used to say I was so dramatic I belonged on stage, right before she smacked me in the mouth for saying something I had no business saying. That day in Miss Johnson's class was the beginning of my dream.
And I am so honored. Repeat to our audience what you told me about why this character is named Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
I mean, I talk about being flabbergasted.
Well, I'm a graduate of John Adams High School. And even though I didn't have the honor of having Sue as my English teacher, I still remember how my peers talked about how much they enjoyed being in her class. Not because she wasn't hard, but because she was, and they learned a lot. So I just really thought about it this morning when I was picking this excerpt that I wrote the Miss Johnson character about you.
Well, bless your heart. I live in immortality. I think that is so wonderful. And that is one of the few rewards in education and teaching is when your students have positive things to say. And though I used to jump, scream, and holler,
Yes.
many of them still come up to me today and talk about how great that was and how they learned. And I used to I used to call them my thugs,
Yes.
and they would be messing up everywhere but in my classroom. And I told them back in those days that if they go to the military, they're going to learn to behave. And I've had a number of guys come back, because there were no women back then.
Right.
And tell me how much they appreciated my jumping up, stomping, and screaming at them, because it all came true when they were in the service.
I know that's right.
So I enjoy those moments, even though I may not recognize the students.
Right, yeah.
Okay, Mary, so we're going to begin to close today's section. And if you are interested in learning more about her creative writing, contact Mary at her email and her website, which we will have on the screen. And we'll be looking forward to her produced works coming up real soon. And I'm so honored to have you back on the show because you're kind of great, kid.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're more
really
than welcome.
appreciate it.
And I'm going to share, if you don't mind, if you do, stop me. I'm going to share a little personal stuff about Mary. She lost her only child, a daughter, back in,
On January 3rd.
okay. Mary resumed her life, writing, producing, and didn't miss a beat. And we understand the pain and horror of what she went through. And Miss Lady lost her only child. Which character?
Yes, there's a real irony in this.
Irony in that Miss Lady in the play also lost
Her daughter.
her
yes.
daughter, seemingly her only child. So we understand what living through arts is all about. So thank you again.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you soon.
Okay, anytime.
Okay, folks, that's it for now. Stay tuned.